Okay, and I think we're on the air. And hey, everybody, it's Adam Farkas along with Paul Farkas and Steve Silverberg. How's everybody doing? So,
Real good
How
today.
are you?
we are doing well, hanging in there.
Ready for another 2-day event.
So, this one's a little bit weirder, I think, than
Um,
most. So, let me put up the slide here to show people why this one's a little weird. And we'll see if they appreciate it or not. So, if you can see up on the screen, um, you don't see my face right now. You don't see anybody's face. You just see our pictures. And what's going on here is our little live stream studio had a bit of an incident involving water over the past couple of weeks. So the place where we usually broadcast from, CEwire Studios, it met a terrible, terrible fate. And perhaps I can show everyone the fate that it met as well. Um, yeah, so it's been an interesting couple of weeks here, but we're starting to get back to normal. Actually, I can put it up on the screen maybe so people can see what happened. Let me see if I can get that going. So I know
I haven't.
you haven't seen it yet. Actually, you haven't been over here, have you? So up on the screen right now, you can
No,
start to
no,
see
I
the
haven't seen
yeah. So
what you've been doing.
if on the stream itself, if you pull it up, you'll actually see I'm putting up a couple of pictures just so you can see what happened here, and just look at the chaos and the devastation around me. You can kind of see, that there's this area of water here. You see a pipe going up here where a sump pump's supposed to be, where water all came in, and then you can look at my crawl space, which we've now had to totally encapsulate in plastic to prevent the water from coming in again and redo the whole thing. So anyway, it's just been a really fun couple weeks here, trying to get everything back together again, and that is why you don't see my smiling face right now. I'm actually crammed into a tiny room with the bare minimum of tech equipment up here to actually get all this stuff done. So it has not been a great couple of weeks here. So
wow.
so yeah.
And the work is on working over the weekend, I assume,
Oh, of course not. Of course not. And so
right?
like,
And
So,
taking time off.
yeah, so it's just dragging on and on. And the funny thing is, of course, the worst part about it is with the pandemic, having people walking in and out of the house is really unnerving. Right? So you have, these different teams of workers coming in, people who blow things up and then people who rebuild things. And it's like, oh my God. Yeah. So anyway, that's why for the live stream today, at the very least, we're not doing much in the way of actually being on camera. But we still have you guys on the line, which is fun, and we can just talk about what's going on today at the
yep.
show. And so, Steve, I know that you've already
One
been in
person
there.
did ask.
Hmm.
Yep. It looks as people have asked. Is one person actually in our live stream now? If there's any C courses that are challenging to get a whole new, let's say, event approved with new lectures. So there's 64 credits, or 63 actually now, and they're all the same as last time. We did add one course last time, so perhaps in the future. But right now, you couldn't take all the lectures last time live anyway. You only had, let's say, about 16 hours of time. So please take whatever you want, and we apologize for no new content. Perhaps in the future we'll have that.
Yeah, and it's we want to have new
And
content in the lectures, but it just hasn't happened yet, just because especially with the stuff that's been going on here. But 64 credits live is pretty good, and we have a new procedure as well for people who, if you're logging into the conference, Steve, I know you're educating people on this, and when people
yes,
first get into the conference, they see a little movie with me on it talking about the fact that the credits now are going to automatically get registered to your account if all you do is sit there and watch. As long as the system knows your Arbo your OE tracker number, if it has that and it sees that you've watched the lecture, you'll automatically get credit for it when you watch live.
But also remember that the lecturers are standing by when you take that lecture, so you can ask questions. They Everyone was nice enough to come back for this session, so everybody is there attending the lecture that they gave. So please feel free to ask any questions that you wish.
Absolutely. Yep. Yeah. That's why they're here. They all came back and they come
on the
back each
computer
time.
in their own time. So
Yep.
yep.
Well,
And
that's the amazing part, that the speakers are willing to give up the lectures that they gave us for a whole year. They started in February, and the deal was that it would end by October, but yet they're willing to go right to January, where they're not giving these lectures anywhere else.
Yep.
So kudos to them, and we have to thank them.
Yeah,
and they've all agreed. This is the fourth of our 7 lectures or live events, and assuming they'll all be back for the October, November, and December, so you don't have to rush and take all your classes today because you have plenty of time to do it in the future, and the fee you paid is good for all the next 3 live events.
Yep. And I think we have to thank our speakers for coming back and doing it. We made it so that this one pass is good for the entire year. And we did it basically, because of the pandemic, right? People have been really good, at least I've discovered, around eye care at least, people have been really good about making accommodations for what's been going on with the pandemic, and we just wanted to do the same thing. Even ARBO, the regulator, has been incredible about helping people during this time, right? By loosening their requirements for CE, and frankly, just by working with us. Things have been hard for us here too, since the conference has grown so big and we've submitted so many credits. ARBO has been really great working with us, making sure that the credits get in okay, and working with us to make sure that the procedures are going smoothly. So everyone's kind of pulled together. It's been really nice to see. So thank you to everyone for making this as painless as possible.
And thank you, ARBO. ARBO does not have let's say, a staff of thousands. It's just a few people processing all these thousands of credits, not only from us, but from other platforms. As everybody knows, there was no Vision Expo East, no AOA, no Vision Expo West, assuming
Yep. Yeah, that's true.
Regional and local meetings have been canceled, so this is the only way of getting credits and also interacting with your field.
Yep, absolutely.
Yep, and also just remember to keep taking as many courses as possible, because you don't know what's going to happen in January. And many of the courses that we're offering, right, you mentioned that some of them will be expiring, that they have to get new credits for it.
Yep.
Right? The co-credits are going to expire.
We'll reprocess this and get them approved again, so the audience doesn't really have to care about that.
Yeah. Well, I think what I'd like to do is
pending. I don't believe we have any pending today.
Yeah, no, they're all fine. What I'd like to do is get some new content as well. So we'll work on that, as much as we can. So in the meantime, though, let me actually put up on the screen here just a couple of things that are going on today, so people can be aware of what's happening here. So let me pull that up as best I can. And again, I apologize if the quality of this stream today isn't as great as it usually is. We are operating under really difficult conditions here. The internet that I'm actually using here is even worse than usual. Normally to stream this stuff at our little control center, it's much better. Here, I'm holed up. I'm using...
and you are breaking up.
Yeah,
yes.
I'm not surprised. So this may happen where I may break up because we are maxing out the connection that I have at my disposal, which is not great. So I apologize in advance if things start to break up.
Richard Armas saying good morning. Hi, Richard. You woke up quite early on the West Coast, so.
Well, he has
thank
his
you for
lecture.
Getting up.
Yep.
His lecture is, I believe, the first one on board, so he
really?
had to.
Yeah.
He had to get up. Okay.
So thanks everyone for attending. By the way, just have it up on the screen. I want to just thank everyone again. Steve mentioned earlier today, we're actually closing in on 6,000 doctors at the conference. So you've made CEwire far and away the biggest conference in eye care. The next closest might be Vision Expo. And so thank you everyone to making the show a really big hit. So we couldn't do it without everyone and without your feedback as well. So if you have things that you like and things that you hate, please let us know, as we go forward. And by the way, in terms of this live stream, again, if I start breaking up, again, apologies. The internet here, this is like a can with a string at this point. So doing our best. So we'll try to persevere here. We're going to be returning.
Make this live event possible. We've got 21 exhibit hall sponsors.
Yep. And so we have, just to let everyone know, we're going to be returning live again, as Steve mentioned, in October, November, December. So don't worry if you can't get in all your credits today. you'll have more time to do it with the same courses. Um, in terms of planning your day, the course schedule is available on CEwire2020.com. Click courses and then download printable course schedule, and that'll get you this nice PDF of the schedule that I'll put up on the screen right here that you can see, and that's how most people plan their day. So consider using that. Uh, and let me pull this back up. Remember, you can't be in two places at once. The software will check to make sure that you're actually watching. Basically, it just checks to see that you have the video window open. And it uses that to determine whether or not you qualify for credits. It's critical that if you want to get credit, you have to watch the entire lecture. Do not leave early. Stick through it to the bitter end, all the way up until the little commercial that's going to run after it, which is me talking about how to get credits. If you've made it that far, you know you've watched the entire thing. Um, it's important also, again, we have a change in procedure today. To make this much more streamlined process, you're going to enter in your Arbo OE tracker number only once in one particular spot. And again, if you watch my little video and if you look at Steve's chats in each class, you'll see how to do it. You only have to enter in that tracker number once, and that's it for good. Even at the next subsequent lectures, it'll be there permanently. Make sure that number is in there. Make sure it is right. If it's right and you watch a live lecture, you will automatically be issued credit for these lectures that we can submit to Arbo. So it literally could not be more streamlined. You can just sit here.
So they never have to.
Yep.
Okay, so they don't have to sign up for the next course they take.
They just
Once
have
they
to
sign up for that first course, they don't have to sign up ever again.
There's no signing up
For any courses.
This is just entering a number in one spot that the computer will remember, and then as they walk into classes for the remainder of this day and all the other days, it remembers their OE tracker number, and it'll submit them to Arbo automatically.
October, December.
Yes, so for all of them. Yep. So again, I made a movie.
And just so you know, I'm in the rooms, and there's quite a few people waiting. Okay.
Yeah. So hopefully this will be.
Yes, the movie is going to play right now at 10:55.
Cool. So in fact, that movie of me talking about it is going to literally play between every class whenever there's spare time. So it's going to drive you insane. It's almost like going to Disney World or something, hearing Small World theme over and over again. It's just going to be me showing you how to change, put in your OE tracker number. Okay, and so let me just also like to thank our sponsors here. Let me put them up on the screen. And again, my apologies if this is breaking up at all. The bandwidth here at our headquarters today ain't great. So thanks to all of our sponsors for sticking with us for this whole time. And again, because of everything that's going on here, I don't know all the discounts that are available, and I haven't been able to get into the booths. So I recommend going into the booth so you can see some of the different discounts. For instance, I know that Lac Rivera, for instance, they've updated their specials. So we have to actually go in and see who's updated what, but definitely take a look. But let me just quickly run through. Thanks to Marco again for sponsoring the live stream today. Not the live stream that I wanted today, but it's what we have. But so thank you for Marco for helping us with that. Optos again, so they make the wide field cameras that people know and love. Check them out again. The discounts, I could not even tell you today what they are, but go into their booth and take a look. I suspect they have something. KONAN Medical, and again, go on into their booth to see what discounts they're running. We've been working with them very closely. They're always running good specials. They had a great special on their REDEFINING device last go around. I suspect that's still running, but I'm not sure. Go in there and check it out. We have a movie actually about that device that we're going to run here in a little while, and hopefully it won't blow up, with our limited bandwidth, with Dr. Craig Thomas talking about it and how he implemented it in his practice. So pretty neat stuff. So again, this was the deal on the REDEFINING that we had last time around. It's quite possible that this is still going on. I just don't know. So we'll have to see. So MacuHealth, makers of supplements, and Steve, I know you're a big proponent of MacuHealth. You use them in your office.
Yep, all the time.
And Luno.
And actually, it does some very nice things.
Yep. And in fact, they had a press release. They had a press release recently I saw for a new product. I'm trying to remember. Like, this is how scattered I've been. But I'm going to pull that up later in the live stream so we can look at it.
What they're trying to do is combine everything together.
Yep. And let's see.
Okay.
Okay, so
Right
Luno
now,
Technology. This is one that
okay.
we're actually doing at the discount for once, right? So Luno got back to me this morning. I was able to put it up. You can see up on the screen CEwire 2020 specials. $0 down, 90 days deferred payments, and interest rates as low as 0% on their devices. So go and check them out. So Hog, makers of the famous octopus, they had specials running last time around. I'm gonna guess that they're doing it the same again here today. So just go on into their booth to check it out. The NeuroVisual Medicine Institute. So this is a place where you can actually physically go. It is actually a physical institute. This isn't just something that they call institute. It's actually a place that you visit. And so you can learn how to use Prism more effectively in your practice to treat a wide variety of conditions. The critical thing is that they are open for business. They're out in Michigan, and they wanted to let everyone know that you can actually go visit the clinics. The institute's up and running, so check it out. So basically, they give you a crash course not only in the clinical aspect of it, but also in the practice management, so you can really implement it in your practice. So pretty cool stuff. Go check it out. So it's for people with binocular vision dysfunction.
Where are they located?
So they are in suburban Detroit.
Whether you said they were in Michigan?
Yeah, suburban Detroit. They're just north of the city. So very easy to get to. A really nice area, and definitely go check it out. I actually worked not far from
Okay.
where their place is when I was doing my internship, and it was nice out there. Very suburban. It was like a little vacation. Nice neighborhood. So,
Years.
yep,
So you should get at least two more listeners.
yep. So Tier Care.
And there are quite a few people in the lectures even now.
Oh, great, excellent. So everyone's making it in and things are working. So Tear Care made by Sight Sciences. So this is for meibomian gland dysfunction. So they make a little device that you attach to the lids and heats everything up and gets the glands flowing again. I think the critical things to know about the device itself is that it's inexpensive. Remember the original devices were like years to get started with. This is not that. This is something very small, portable, inexpensive that you can use to get started if you're interested in treating meibomian gland dysfunction. So go check them out as well. VTI naturalVue, so they make specialty contact lenses, a soft lens, multifocal, that in fact many people are using for myopia management. And I know, Steve, you've used this in your practice as well.
Mm-hmm. Answering people are still asking. We gave them advice. How do they get their credits if they don't have an OE tracker number? And Adam has said what to do. But if you enter your license number, it'll be fine, and you'll get the certificate, and you could then send it to Arbo or keep it for the state board.
Yeah, and
But yes, they do use it.
Yep, I'm loath to say it, but it's really funny actually. We've even had cases where we've submitted the person's license number to Arbo, and the folks at Arbo have looked at it and have gone the extra mile to actually say, oh, that's not an OE tracker number, but that is a license number. Let me see if we can help and get it straight for you. So again, they're really trying to go above and beyond to get people's credits in. So, but if you know your OE tracker number, please enter it. It makes it easier for everybody. So ZEISS.
But I'm sorry I interrupted. The naturalVue product I've used for a long time, and it's great for myopia control. The daily wear lens, the multifocal, it's great. The single vision lens for distance vision is great. So it's just a great product, and encourage people to try it.
Excellent. And so ZEISS, obviously a big sponsor of the conference. We've been doing a lot of work with them recently. They have sort of embraced this idea of going virtual in a wholehearted way. You may have actually seen some of their other virtual conferences that they've been doing, not for CE credit, but purely just for education. So they've been a really great partner, so I can't thank them enough for coming on and working with us on this project. So go into their booth. They obviously have lots of specials running. They also have some, really interesting content all around social distancing. So definitely go check out what they've been doing and how they've been trying to help. They're sort of been really big into the idea of remote refraction too. I know a lot of the high-tech equipment manufacturers, whether it's Luno or ZEISS or Marco, they're all starting to leverage the capabilities built into their instruments that have always been there, but that people had never really used before, which is really interesting to me, right? They're starting, they've had this functionality, no one really cared, and now all of a sudden everyone cares. So definitely, go into each booth for the vendor so you can see how they're all using their equipment for remote refraction and telemedicine. So AB Max, so this is the device for anterior blepharitis. So I like to say it looks like a little Dremel moto tool. You can sort of see a stylized picture of it right there. But a highly effective tool to use in office to help folks with anterior blepharitis. The effects are immediate. Patients see the results immediately. They can feel them. It's not painful to do. It tickles a little bit, but beyond that, it's a highly effective tool. Check it out. The AB Max is actually the latest generation of this device. The folks behind AB Max invented the original generation, which is a different brand. You may have seen it or have it in your office. So the people behind AB Max actually held the patents on it and spun out a new company to create this new generation device. So it's got different operational modes. And I think one of the critical parts about it too is that it's much cheaper to operate. The consumables are cheaper. So you can make your money back much quicker. Now they had a special going at the last live stream that we did. I don't know if this is still going on right now. I'm going to guess that it is, or something similar, for folks here at the conference. But you can get a sense of how much it costs and what it's like. So Steve, I know you've used this product as well.
Yes, just to give an endorsement, I've had it as well as the first generation product, and it does outperform it. It's cheaper, easy to use. The tip is a little bit more adaptable for the lid, and again, it's a much less expensive device to buy. And with the so special, if he still has it, I'm sure he might. John's a real nice guy, the owner of the company. Anybody's working with dry eye blepharitis, it's something that you must have in your office. And again, this device, I think, side by side with the original one, it outperforms it, and it's less expensive, so it's a slam dunk.
Yep. And
Okay,
again, they're also doing
here.
Zoom sessions. With the era of social distancing, they can teach you remotely, and give you these cute certificates as well remotely. So they want to get your whole staff involved and learning how to use the device. So NeuroLens, again, thank you to them for sponsoring the conference today. So NeuroLens makes a device to measure binocular misalignment, and then create a prescription so that you can create custom lenses with contoured prism. And I have a pair sitting right here. I use them when I'm at the computer. They just make my eyes feel a little bit more relaxed. So that's why I use them, and they work really well. The optics are really nice too, and the quality of the lens is actually quite good as well, and that's why I continue to use them as my little office lens here. Hard to actually tell from the device what's going on there. It's just from a picture, but it's actually got a very small footprint, and it's totally self-contained, and it's a very easy test for the patients to do. It doesn't take very long, and you get a prescription that you just send out to their lab to get the lenses made. And they had a deal going last time. I'm going to guess, since it is still the year 2020, that they're still doing something where they're holding off, on payments. And so I don't know if they're still doing it, but we can find out. Go into their booth. They might have more content on that, about what their specials are. And I'm going to actually try to contact them today as well. So, tomorrow we might have a better sense. So Oculus, makers of a wide variety of devices, including my favorite, the Pentacam. Thank you to them for sponsoring today. We've been talking a lot about Oculus over the last several months, and the different ways that people are using their instruments. One of the interesting things is that they have new modules now, and I think it's been approved, and they're starting to sell it now for measuring axial length. So people are starting to use their equipment for myopia management as well. I don't know whether, and this I should be up to date on this, but I'm not, in terms of whether or not they've actually started selling this in the U.S. These modules. I know they are in Europe, and the plan was to get them over here right now, and I should probably talk to them about it because it's pretty exciting stuff. So check them out. They had a financing deal as well with no payments for 6 months. I don't know again if that's still going on. Probably is. Go into their booth and check it out. And again, this was their summer deal. But what's interesting is Oculus is a German company, but they have a headquarters here in the U.S., actually not far from me, up in Seattle. And that's actually where they service a lot of their product. And so they get a bunch of refurbs into that facility as well. And so they resell their refurbs there. So really, really cool company. You think it's gigantic and impersonal, this big German company, you're never going to contact anyone. And then you realize here on the US side, they're actually a really small operation. They're really easy to work with. If you need to get in touch with the CEO, he's available. And they take a lot of feedback on their devices straight from the clinician and make modifications based on clinician feedback. So really interesting company and cool to work with. So Oculus. Science-based health, makers of Hydro Eye. So as their name implies, they formulate their supplements based on the latest available science. And Zach from Science-Based Health, I don't know if he's going to be here today, in the lectures watching, but he has a wealth of knowledge on supplementation for ocular conditions, and he can go on and on telling you about the latest science. So that's probably the most interesting part about this company, is that when you look at their formulations and what each ingredient is and how much goes in, all of it is driven by whatever research they can get their hands on. So again, check them out as well. So Covalent Careers, they're actually the largest company for placement in eye care. So if you're looking for a new position, or if you're looking to hire in an OD or an optician, you might want to place your ad on their website. It's got a syndication system essentially. So when you place an ad with them, they put that ad in a wide variety of eye care sites, including on ODwire. We have a little section of our classifieds that just lists jobs from Covalent Careers. And by the way, for anyone who's here today, if you actually use a code, if you go to ODwire.org/jobs, you'll get 10% off if you want to put up an ad with Covalent Careers. So check them out as well. EyeCare Live, I don't think I need to tell everyone that telehealth has been a big deal over these past several months. And so EyeCare Live is sort of on the tip. They're on the vanguard of telehealth in eye care. A lot of people have tried to do telehealth via tools like what we're using here today, or Zoom, these sort of unstructured tools. But going forward, what you're going to need in your office is a much more structured tool that captures the data in a structured way, where you can actually prove that you did the exam, should you, be audited by a third party. And so EyeCare Life provides you with these, secure HIPAA-compliant tools that document the encounter in a very structured way, and in ways that patients can easily interact with on their phone. So it's a really cool tool if you don't want to use something, a little less formal like Zoom. So check out EyeCare Live. eyecarepro, again, if you have a social presence for your practice and a website, you definitely want to use them. They're experts in doing this. They've done this for literally hundreds of practices, so they know what works and what doesn't online, particularly if you are now seeing what's going on with Google reviews. I guess that's probably even more important these days than Yelp in a lot of ways. If you practice comes up on a map in Google, if you mouse over it, you'll notice that it has a rating there. And you want to make sure that your Google reviews are good. And eyecarepro can actually help you make sure that your reviews are good, and that you're actually getting good feedback from your patients, and helping you populate that. So check them out as well. Lacrovera, makers of punctal plugs. We mentioned before they have a ton of specials, and we've updated those in their booth. So head on over to their booth to see what they are. There's more than I could even list here on all of their different products. It's like a restaurant menu of discounts that they have at the show today. So check them out. And Optometry Times. Unfortunately, Gretchen Bailey isn't here with us today. But Optometry Times practical chairside advice. So they make these journal that has these great bite-sized articles that are very easy to read and practical. And as Gretchen says, her journal is designed to be read and then thrown away. She doesn't want you keeping these things as like a shrine to Optometry Times. You should use the information that's in the journal and then move on. So it's a cool publication. And sorry that Gretchen couldn't be here today. Maybe we can snag her later because it would be great to have her on. I want to catch up and see what's going on with her. And finally, Vision Equipment Inc. So this is Leo Hadley's company. They they resell refurbished equipment, and Leo stands behind everything that he sells. And we've been working with him for well over a decade now, I would guess. And everyone really likes working with him. He gets the equipment back into like new condition, puts a warranty behind it, and gets it to you. So if you're looking to expand, maybe redo a couple of lanes, this is a good way to do it inexpensively, without breaking the bank. And unfortunately, with what's been going on in the economy over the past several months with COVID, Leo, I'm certain, has inventory now of equipment from practices that didn't make it. Very lightly used, I'm sure. So definitely check out his booth and get in touch with Leo if you're looking to outfit a new lane. And that's it. So those are all of our sponsors. And Steve, how's everything going out there?
Going well, but a little bit of confusion. I've been in all the rooms that speakers are there, the lectures are going on fine, but people are confused when you the question. Well, you don't. The only question you have to answer is your OE tracker number. And if you put that in and save it, that should be all you have to do. I've been on the phone with Kat as well as exchanging emails with our support staff. So it's actually very easy, but people think they have to answer a question. Yes, they do. The only question they have to answer is what their OE tracker number is, and then there's a save button below it. I'm going in all the rooms and explaining to them, so I have to do that all
Steve,
day.
Yeah.
But once they get to the first section.
And Steve, you also have a direct link that you're putting in that chat window, right? So people can see exactly what they need to do?
Yes.
Okay, great. So
Yep.
yeah, it's very easy. And I know it's confusing for people because they're so used to doing it in another way. Yeah. So,
Can you answer that question?
Excuse me, Paul?
Can that be eliminated from, because that is confusing.
well,
Yeah, the verbiage could probably, it's simple code to just wipe that out. Probably we'll have the support do it for tomorrow's lecture. It's hard to do on the fly. But right now, if I put it in the rooms, I'm doing it now, that all they have to do is enter their tracking number and save it, and that's all they have to do. So we try to make it too easy. I think everybody is a little more calm now that they could get their little credits.
yeah.
It's the same thing. When you press Save Answers, it does ask you must answer at least one question. It generates that after you put your OE tracker number in, which is quite curious. But CAD the support staff said that's all they have to do. Okay, I'm just going to go off the phone call for a second to take care of this. Okay, guys? Hold on.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
It's amazing when you think you have all the answers. As soon as you put it out there are more questions.
There's nothing that we can do to make it, totally foolproof, but when you're dealing with thousands of people, when you have thousands of people, you can't always make it completely foolproof. So we can just do the best we can and go from there. So, yeah.
It'd be interesting to be a fly on the wall with other vendors, with other programs that are getting CE. What problems they come up with.
Well, it's
got to be amazing when they're new in the game.
Well, so no one is doing it the way we are, right? We're doing 64 credits over the next 2 days, and we were thrust into a situation where Arbo decided to change their rules on us midstream, right? The conference was already set in stone, and we were doing it when all of a sudden in March, they decided to change the game completely and change the way people get their credits. In a normal year, you have to take a test for all of this stuff. And so there's none of this, where do I put my tracker number or whatever else? You have to actually go through a form where you take an entire test. And it's at that point where we can capture all that information about your attendance. Now, with what's been going on, you don't have to take it. So the idea is we just want to get their tracker number and let them sit there and watch everything. But in order to do this, we've had to change the software, and it's a little challenging. So yeah, um,
I can't imagine what's going to happen with the American Academy of Optometry, who are offering 300 hours. You
well,
know,
yeah, I mean, so
it's got to be crazy.
yeah, it's going to be challenging for them. Um,
You know, just the mechanics. I just don't know how they're going to handle it.
yeah, I mean, this is the world in which we live now. The good part for all of this, as upset as people get about their credits, is that the software is watching that it's watching what people are doing. It's watching the fact that they're taking the courses. So even if their tracker number isn't in there, if we enter it in retroactively later, it remembers what classes they took. So they'll get credit for this stuff. So they don't have to feel like, oh my God, I sat here for nothing. It'll remember what they took and what they didn't, and we can just enter in their tracker number later. It's easier, of course, if they enter it in up front, and then they don't have to do anything.
Yep. I've entered all the rooms, and people are getting the idea now. And you'll get some people who are confused, but the smart ones know they just have to really fill out that form, the profile form, and put the OE tracking number in there, and then they don't even have to test for the attendance because the software will follow the fact.
Yeah. Steve, I have a feeling that you're going to have to repeat yourself over and over
What
again
happens
all morning.
if, God forbid, people are sitting there?
Yes. What was your question,
What
Paul?
happens? Yeah. Well, what happens if somebody is sitting there and being like I am, I fall asleep in the middle of the course, right? If the course is over, do they have to click out, or if they're fast asleep, will it just close
Okay, Dad.
close out on them?
Okay, so we'll table your senior citizen falling asleep question for a second here because hold
Okay.
on a second because we have real issue here that we just have to hit. So hold on. Let me pull this up here because people are now asking me. So hang on. Sorry. I just
Yeah, you see what it was saying. Yeah.
Yeah, so hold on for 1 second. Let me just pull this up. Okay, so yeah, let me just show everyone, what we can do here, how this is actually going to look. So because people have been asking me, I'm going to log in as a regular course attendee right now. So I'm at the login screen. As everyone can see, I click login. Okay, so the question is, how do I apply credit? Let me make this really clear to people. Okay, so you just need to enter your OE tracker number once. I think I said it in the movie, but hopefully you're watching the movie. Click on Help Center, right? It says Help Center down here. It says Help Center right here at the top. Click on it, right? From there, go to where it says Privacy Center. That's not intuitive, I know, but that's where it is. And then you click on Edit Profile. What you're trying to do here is edit your profile at the conference. Scroll down in your profile. The very last field says OE Tracker. Enter your tracker number. I have one written here for myself that is obviously fake, but enter your OE tracker number there and hit save. That's it. And so now it's saved in your profile. And so what that means is that anytime you go look at a course, it knows that you're at the course. It knows what your OE tracker number is, and then it will record the fact that you were there. So yeah, so that is how it works. So does that make sense to everyone? I hope. That's all you have to do. And I know it's different.
Yes, and for all attendees, you don't have to panic, because if you don't do the attestation or submit the data perfectly at the beginning, as long as you attended the course, the software knows that, and you can go back in per Adam's video.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah, so again, there's nothing to panic about here. You saw how I just did it. It's very easy. Let me do it one more time so people can see. I want to make sure that people, can get it. So from the lobby, where everybody, knows how to get to the lobby, go to the Help Center. So when you click on Help Center, then you click where it says Privacy Center. Click on Edit Profile. Scroll down, you'll see your whole profile with your name and address and stuff. And the last one is OE Tracker. And just fill it in there and click Save. There you go. Okay, it really could not be simpler to do. I know it's just different, and that's why people are freaking out about it. But if you do it just this once, now it's going to remember you permanently. So when you come back in October, November, December, you're never going to have to do that again. And that's why we did this. We don't want you to have to attest to anything. Just you enter it in once, and from here on in through the end of the year, there's nothing else for you to do. And I think Steve, hopefully will be in the classrooms now all morning, every single time a class starts, reminding people of this, that they only have to do this once, and that's it.
Please don't enter your tracker number in the chat box.
Yeah. Well, yeah, they can. But it's not going to go anywhere.
Well, the confusion is they're not filling out the form.
Right. So that link that I gave you goes straight to the form. So they should click on that link, and it'll take them straight to their profile form, and that's where they should fill in their OE tracker number.
Mm-hmm.
So Steve is typing.
If they don't, if they don't, but they go to test and they put the OE tracker number and save, our support staff says that's good enough for them to get the credits.
It is, but it would be much better if they just put it in that profile field and make sure that it's there, because then they really don't have to do anything else.
The trouble is some people have skipped your video and they don't see it, so they don't know what they don't know. And so I'm putting your link in also to view that, to do it that way. But people I'm getting thank yous. They understand what to do. So hopefully it won't be. And like we've said, there's no issue. You will still get the credits. Don't panic about that. If you have to do the form at a later date and then go into a course that you did take, the software does remember that you've been in there and will give.
Yeah, and in fact, I'm going to send.
We have it under control.
I'm going to send out an email.
Okay.
As well, I think, with a link to my movie after the conference is done, to remind people, make sure that your profile is finished and that you have your OE tracker number in it. Watch my little movie to see how to do it, but it really couldn't be simpler. It's just a matter of doing it. So.
Okay, we're getting fewer questions. So there's hundreds of people attending, and only 2 or 3 in each room. We're a little confused, so it's fine now. To see here.
Yeah, I just think for the next day and a half, we're going to have to just keep every single time a class starts, try to get into a room and just say, hey, if you haven't done it, you have to do this once.
Support staff send a link to that. Perhaps the support staff could send a link to that to all the attendees, at least tonight, so they know to fill out the form before going into the first lecture, and that's all they have to do for the whole day.
Well, I think what I'm going to do is probably send out a mass email with my movie and just let them watch the movie. The issue, and Steve, this is a technical issue, which is a really funny one. That link that I gave you, where you're directly getting people to their profile, that won't work unless people are logged in already to the conference. So that's why.
Okay, just so you know what's happening behind the scenes. Okay, so you know what's happening behind the scenes. Support is now removing the attendance check box entirely. So people have to fill out the form, so there won't be any other way of getting credit. So I'll let them know that in each lecture.
Okay, yeah.
I got this from Mr. Ford.
Yeah, and again, we should remind people they just have to fill out that OE tracker number once in their profile. They don't have to do it multiple times. They don't have to do it after every class. It's just once.
Yep. Just once, and they could do it even before they attend the first lecture, because once they have the stuff on file, all the requirement is just like any other lecture series, whether it's live or online, is just attend it, and we know that they attended it by keeping their browser open and watching the whole lecture, and don't leave before the end, because ARPA requires it and we require it.
Yep. Yeah, and again, so that OE tracker number becomes like part of their profile. So as you can see up on the screen, I still have it up there. It becomes the same thing as like your phone number, right? It becomes part of you. And so as long as it knows it once and has it in here, you only have to enter it in once.
Okay. Attendance. People have questions.
Okay, so it looks like people have it under control. You can see actually up on the screen right now, I put it so people, you can see the questions. This is Kat, actually. You see an email from a doctor who had a question for our support team, and this is Kat who actually answered it. There are no questions this go around. Just make sure your OE tracker is on file. Click Update Profile OE right above the session playing and enjoy the sessions. No need to do anything other than attend the full session. That's it. So again, as Kat mentioned, there's a button that says Update Profile /OE right above the session playing. And Steve, you should see that too when you're in the classes, and that's another way to get to your profile page.
At box,
Yep.
the attendance check, because it's creating more confusion than helping.
Yeah.
So in order to get credit, you have to go to do the update profile form, and that's a better way. So that it's kind of because what it's instead of generating a question to answer a question which they don't have to answer, that's the confusion. She's removing the box as we speak. It should be removed for the next series of lectures by 12 o'clock.
Excellent.
Eastern time.
Excellent. So yeah.
Yep. In all the rooms now.
You know, I mean, these are just the things that it's like trial by fire. But again, it gets easier and easier. And for the last 3 conferences that we're going to do, October, November, December, it should be, old hat for people.
Okay, so I'm putting it in all the rooms now so people who are a little behind the curve get it. But it's no problem.
And again, I will apologize to everyone for the live stream today if you are listening to the quality of it while you don't see us on camera and everything else. That we had a disaster here at CEwire headquarters. That we can show everyone with water incursion and destruction and chaos underneath the facility and all that fun stuff that everyone loves to see.
I think we calm people down.
So that's why we're doing the live stream this way today, where we're just sort of chatting on the phone. The quality is a little bit lower than usual. Fortunately, this doesn't impact the actual lectures themselves, which use totally different infrastructure, but our poor little studio here is in terrible, terrible shape, and that's why we're doing it this way. So our apologies for that.
Okay.
You know, there are 2 hurricanes coming.
Yep.
It might start affecting optometrists again, so some offices might end up looking this way. I hope it doesn't happen to anyone.
Yeah.
But it don't look quite as bad as it might be a little tropical storm, and it's going to hit like the Houston area in a couple of days. But hopefully, Alan Panzer's office won't be underwater again.
Yeah. Oh, speaking of Texas, I wanted to say thank you.
We gotta hope.
I wanted to say thank you to Ed Mackler. So let me put up on the screen here and show people. So one of the threads on ODwire that we've been talking about is hand sanitizer, and how there are bogus hand sanitizers going around. Right? You think it's pure isopropyl alcohol, and it's not. And they have all kind of contaminants. Well, lo and behold, I actually got one of those bad purifiers. It wasn't just like something that fell off a truck in some developing country. Here you see a picture of me holding on to this hand sanitizer that I purchased at a supermarket, a normal, large chain supermarket here in Oregon. And this is one of the ones that was on the list of contaminated hand sanitizers that I've, of course, been using for the past several weeks. So I guess the moral to this story is it can happen to you. So be very careful. And there are lists of these sanitizers that don't work. But Ed Mackler and his daughter had started a company to get people good hand sanitizer, Purell and other brands that we know are not contaminated. And Ed was actually thoughtful enough to send me a gift box because he saw my disaster here with this bad hand sanitizer. He sent me a gift box filled with sanitizer that actually works properly and will not kill me. So you can see here. So he started a company with his daughter to get practices the sanitizers that they need that are of high quality. I can actually put that up on the screen for you as well so you can see it. So they have a website. You can see it right here. Sanitize TX. TX, I guess, means Texas, since that's where he's from. And so they have all of these products in stock. Ed was telling me the story about how he became a distributor and a wholesaler of these things, and how he gets them by the pallet load straight from the manufacturer, and his house looks like a disaster area because everything's stacked up. But he took the initiative to do it, and I'm glad that he did because a lot of these products are scarce. When I go into my local supermarket here in Oregon, you can't get most of these things, and even if you can, they ration them. So you can't get very many. So if your practice is looking for cleaning stuff, this is the place to go. Ed has it. So Sanitize TX. So that is my hand sanitizer story for the day.
Okay, I think we've solved the problem because they'll just update the profile. It was amazing back in March and middle of March, especially when you couldn't get anything in the store. We were using leaves and other
Yep.
for your practice or your personal use at home.
Yeah. So I would
And
definitely.
in fact,
Yeah. I mean.
they were overstocked in most.
Yeah. So it's been a challenge here, but thanks to Ed for doing that and getting the stuff to us. So, but I was just amazed that I got that
Yep.
contaminated stuff. I mean, I was shocked that if you go to a real a major grocery chain that they would actually sell stuff that was contaminated.
And what's really interesting is that I haven't heard reports locally of any office. I'm connected to quite a few people, and I've asked them. So it's really been working. That the PP is really keeping the staff safe and the patients safe, and as long as the patients comply with things. I think people are getting the idea, even in the whether it be, I don't want to get political here, red states versus blue states. In your office, everything is what you want it to be. It's not red or blue. It's black and white.
Right. Yep. All right. So Steve, it sounds like we have things under control here for now. Um, why don't
Yep.
why don't I turn on a little movie since we'll see if this actually blows everything up here because God only knows the bandwidth here has been terrible. But why don't we try putting up a movie just so people, if they're not part of CEwire yet, can see what something is like. We could put up uh, the ptosis show that Doctors Resnick and Hauser did. And so they can actually get a sense of what this is like and see if they want to actually dive in and take CEwire and get credit for it. So why don't we do that? It's 45 minutes long. People can take a look. How does that sound?
Sounds good. I'll be patrolling here and helping people get through the beginning part of this lecture, but no problem.
All right.
Okay,
So I'll see you
we'll
guys
see everybody in 45
in
minutes.
45 minutes. See you then. Bye.
Okay, bye.
Hi everyone, welcome to our talk on acquired blepharoptosis. We thank CEwire for the opportunity to present on this
timer,
commonly discussed
42
topic.
minutes.
I'm here today with my co-presenter, Dr. Whitney Hauser. I'll be starting off the discussion by reviewing normal lid anatomy, the changes in structure and function which lead to blepharoptosis, and an overview of the etiology and classification. Dr. Hauser is then going to take us through the clinical workup and conclude with an overview of current treatment and management options. These are our disclosures. Let's start by just reviewing eyelid structure and function. If you'll recall, the closure of the eyelids is facilitated by the circumferential orbicularis oculi muscle, which is innervated by the facial or seventh cranial nerve. The elevators of the upper eyelid are the levator palpebrae superioris and Mueller's muscle. The levator is the main upper eyelid elevator and is innervated by the ocular motor or third cranial nerve. It originates from the lesser wing of the sphenoid bone and becomes fan-shaped, and it extends through the aponeurosis as it enters the eyelid. It penetrates the orbital septum and extends into the upper lid, fanning out across the entire length and inserts on the anterior aspect of the tarsal plate. Mueller's muscle is a smooth muscle. It arises from the undersurface of the levator, just posterior to the fornix, and inserts into the superior tarsus. Mueller's muscle is innervated by the sympathetic nervous system. The muscle is responsible for the over-elevation of the eyelid, such as when a patient becomes excited or feel fearful, and if the patient is fatigued or inattentive, it can lead to mild ptosis. So how do we define ptosis? Ptosis is an abnormal, low-lying or drooping upper eyelid margin with the eye in primary gaze. It's a common disorder. There are millions of individuals affected in the U.S. and worldwide. Severity is typically assessed based on the amount of measurable eyelid droop, and Dr. House is going to go into this in more detail a little bit later on. But just as an overview, if there is a droop of 1 to 2 millimeters, it generally leads to limited visual impairment, 2 to 4 millimeters with mild to medium visual impairment, and more than 4 millimeters with significant visual impairment. Blepharoptosis can be unilateral or bilateral, and based on the age of onset, we categorize it as either congenital or acquired. Acquired is typically associated with aging. So mechanically, ptosis is linked to the dysfunction of the muscles responsible for eyelid elevation. Loss of tonus in either of them will result in ptosis. Because the superior palpebral levator is the main retractor of the upper eyelid, deficiency in its function produces a more significant ptosis. The levator receives its innervation from the superior division of the third cranial nerve. Denervation of Mueller's muscle, on the other hand, will only cause a mild ptosis of about 1 to 2 millimeters. So what about epidemiology? How prevalent is this, and in what populations? According to the American Society for Aesthetic Plastic Surgery, eyelid surgery was 5th among the top plastic surgical procedures in the U.S. in 2018 at over 110,000 procedures. It is the most common surgical procedure in the 65-plus age group. This slide looks at the result of a retrospective chart review study on all patients referred for ptosis to the Oculoplastics Division at the University of Illinois Eye and Ear Infirmary between 2007 and 2010. The final etiology for each patient's ptosis was determined based on history, standard eyelid measurements, and ancillary testing. And then they categorized it as aponeurotic, neurogenic, myogenic, traumatic, or congenital. And the demographics, including median age and sex, were analyzed for patients in each category as well. The ptosis clinical findings that they used were measurements of marginal reflex distance, levator function, palpebral fissure, and they used ancillary testing. For instance, single fiber electromyography and acetylcholine receptor antibody testing was used to help in diagnosing myasthenia gravis. Neuroimaging was used in cranial nerve 3 palsy, and Horner syndrome was tested for pharmacologically and then further investigated with imaging. And they concluded that a significant portion or proportion of patients referred with ptosis had more serious conditions such as neurogenic or myogenic ptosis. Thus, we as clinicians have to maintain a high degree of suspicion and thoroughly evaluate all patients with ptosis. We want to properly assess for underlying systemic conditions, and we're going to talk more about that shortly. But just keep in mind that the congenital group had the youngest median age at 10.5 years, and the aponeurotic group had the oldest median age at 62 years. So how does ptosis impact patients' lives? I think we're all familiar with patients who come in and express dissatisfaction with cosmesis, but there are other things that patients will experience as well. And while cosmesis may be the primary concern for some individuals with ptosis, more advanced cases are associated with visual field disruption, eyelid strain, altered head position in an effort to compensate, and headaches due to forehead and scalp muscle strain. And all of this can decrease a patient's quality of life. I know in my practice, a lot of times patients will come in just complaining that their eyelids feel really heavy, and they are actually aware of decreased visual function. So let's talk now about the causes of blepharoptosis, and we're going to start by looking at congenital versus acquired. Congenital blepharoptosis is typically caused by developmental myopathy of the levator muscle. Acquired, on the other hand, is most often caused by stretching of the levator or disinsertion of the muscle complex from its insertion on the anterior to superior tarsal plate. But it can also be caused by reduced nervous input to the muscles that elevate the eyelid, and we call that neurogenic, injury, which is traumatic, excess skin or heaviness of the eyelid, which is mechanical, and then there are certain cases, they're not as common, they're quite rare, where there's actually primary muscle dysfunction, such as in certain forms of muscular dystrophy, which we called myotonic dystrophy or myogenic blepharoptosis. So an overview of aponeurotic ptosis clinically. How do these patients present? You'll see a reduced MRD1, which we call margin to reflex distance. You will see a high upper eyelid crease. There will be near normal levator function, and there will be decreased palpebral fissure in down gaze. So as the patient looks down, the palpebral fissure actually reduces at a higher rate than somebody who does not have levator dysfunction. In myogenic and congenital ptosis, you'll see a weak or absent eyelid crease. You'll see poor levator function, and again, eyelid lag on down gaze. So this is just a schematic on how to break down congenital versus acquired. You'll see that congenital will define as occurring or diagnosed at birth to about a year, and then acquired from a year on. And in both categories, we can further subdivide them into isolated and non-isolated. So let's first talk about congenital ptosis. It's ptosis that's present at birth, as we said, or within the first year of life, and it's most commonly isolated, which means it's not associated with other ocular findings. In about 75% of the cases, it's unilateral. The majority of congenital ptosis is due to myogenic dysgenesis of the levator muscle. It most often does not affect vision, but in severe cases, the drooping eyelid may occlude all or part of the pupil and may interfere with vision, resulting in amblyopia. Congenital ptosis may occur through autosomal dominant inheritance. So when we see a child with ptosis, we want to be sure we are finding any underlying cause. It may be a good idea to question the parents about other relatives having been born with a lid problem, and certainly we want to address it to prevent any potential amblyopic changes. To briefly review other possible causes of isolated congenital ptosis, there's something called synkinetic ptosis, which many of us will remember as Marcus-Gunn jaw winking syndrome. And if you'll recall, that's a rare congenital ptosis, and it's due to an aberrant innervation of the levator muscle by the mandibular branch of the trigeminal nerve. So what happens is there's a brisk upper eyelid retraction when the person is chewing, smiling, or sucking, and often the parent will notice this right after birth when they're feeding the child. In aponeurotic ptosis, that's a congenital defect results from a failure of the aponeurosis to insert on the anterior surface of the tarsus from birth, and it can follow a forceps delivery, and the skin crease may remain normal or high, depending on where the aponeurosis is affected. The levator function is generally good, and there is no lid lag on down gaze. And to review just a few of the causes of non-isolated congenital ptosis, that may be due to close embryological development of the levator and the superior rectus muscles. Congenital ptosis may be associated with superior rectus weakness. And then there is a congenital form of Horner's syndrome which can occur in infancy, which also presents, just like in adulthood, with ptosis, meiosis, anhidrosis, and progressive heterochromia. Again, the lighter colored iris will be ipsilateral to the affected side, and the lesion may occur anywhere along the oculosympathetic pathway. So in these patients, it's important to evaluate for possible etiologies such as congenital varicella, tumors of the neck and mediastinum, and vascular lesions of the internal carotids or subclavian artery. And then there's congenital third cranial nerve palsy, which may be partial or complete, and it may present with ptosis together with other signs such as the inability to depress, elevate, or adduct the eye, and the pupil may be dilated. So let's focus now on acquired blepharoptosis, which is the main subject of our talk from this point on. Acquired blepharoptosis is typically associated with aging. A study of 400 patients in the UK found that blepharoptosis was present in over 11% of adults aged 50 and older. And if we extrapolate this to the United States population, this prevalence corresponds to an estimated 13 million patients aged 50 plus in 2020. Other known risk factors, either temporary or permanent, include ocular surgery, and this can include glaucoma surgery, cataract surgery, corneal strabismus, which can lead to temporary or permanent blepharoptosis. Contact lens wear, wearing hard or soft contact lenses, has been found to increase the incidence versus no contact lens wear, and one potential mechanism would be levato-aponeurosis dehiscence due to the method of hard contact lens removal. And then, of course, we always have to be suspicious for underlying disease, such as myasthenia gravis or diabetes. As previously discussed, similar to congenital ptosis, acquired ptosis may be categorized as isolated or non-isolated. The most common cause of isolated acquired ptosis is aponeurotic. It's most common in adults. The abnormality is in the levator. There is a dehiscence, disinsertion, or stretching. It can occur in younger patients as well. In younger patients, as mentioned, repeated manipulation of the upper eyelid during contact lens wear, and this can occur in both hard and soft lens wearers, may cause disinsertion of the levator. It occurs frequently after ocular surgery and following trauma. There are some other causes, though, and that can include eyelid trauma from infection or allergy, blepharochalasis, pregnancy, chronic use of topical steroids, and frequent lid rubbing. Mechanical ptosis is caused by excess weight of the upper lid. There are a multitude of causes that can easily be distinguished on physical exam. A few common causes are edema, inflammation, tumors, chalasia, dermoid cysts, neurofibromas, and amyloid deposits. And scarring from inflammation, surgery, Stevens-Johnson syndrome, or ocular pemphigoid can also lead to mechanical ptosis. Always perform orbital imaging in patients with an underlying mass or infiltrative lesion. Acquired traumatic ptosis can develop as the result of any trauma to the orbit. Traumatic ptosis can be neurogenic, aponeurotic, myogenic, or mechanical in nature. Iatrogenic causes account for roughly 50% of traumatic blepharitis. And traumatic ptosis has been reported to account for 11.2% of blepharoptosis in a tertiary care oculoplastic setting. And there was a study that showed 4% to 12% after cataract surgery procedures, and there's about 10 to 12% after trabeculectomy alone and combined trabeculectomy phacoemulsification. The causes can include disinsertion of the levator muscle or damage to the levator tendon with scar formation. Alternatively, cranial nerve 3 damage can also sustain damage leading to the ptosis. In severe cases that result in significant damage to the levator, patients may require multiple surgeries with a poor probability of restoring natural eyelid anatomy. Patients who are at increased risk for cranial nerve 3 involvement include those with head trauma injuries, post-traumatic cavernous sinus thrombosis, orbital apex fractures, and nerve compression by foreign bodies. Patients with CN3 damage will typically resolve on their own with time and should be observed for spontaneous recovery over a period of 3 to 6 months before considering surgical intervention. As we mentioned, rigid lens-induced eyelid ptosis is a well-established condition. It's thought to be caused by years of mechanical traction from pulling the lids while removing the lens. Patients can typically resume wear of their lenses 2 to 6 weeks after surgery and are instructed to use a plunger. Some patients, however, may best be suited for a soft lens refit. An update in the contact lens parameters may be necessary after surgery due to the change in eyelid and lens dynamics, so you want to warn patients that their lenses may sit differently. They may have more problems wearing their lens even if the lens is in exactly the same positions, and patients may feel drier and have more trouble wearing their lenses after surgery. Investigators compared the rate of hard lens users in ptosis cases with that in a control group and then estimated the odds ratio. So the study you see here included all patients aged between 30 to 60 years who were seen with aponeurotic ptosis. And ptosis was defined as a margin reflex distance of both eyes that was less than or equal to 1.5 millimeters. And the controls were subjects with an MRD of both eyes that was more than or equal to 3 millimeters. And the control subjects were selected from an age-matched group of female hospital employees. And they concluded that the pathogenesis induced ptosis is aponeurogenic and is similar to the involutional changes that are associated with attenuation or disinsertion of the aponeurosis from its distal insertion in the eyelid. As we discussed earlier, before treating blepharoptosis, it's important to conduct a differential diagnosis to identify any potentially serious underlying cause. Because in some cases, ptosis can be a sign of more serious cause, a focused neurological exam should be carried out on patients. And serious conditions masquerading as blepharoptosis can include Horner's and myasthenia gravis. If Horner syndrome is suspected, pharmacological testing with eye drops such as hydroxyamphetamine and iopidine and imaging may be an important part of detecting the underlying cause. Myasthenia gravis is a unilateral or bilateral ptosis with upper eyelid position variability that is often accompanied by diplopia and/or strabismus. And those with myasthenia gravis could also have respiratory compromise or a concurrent thymoma. A history of intermittent diplopia and worsening symptoms throughout the day suggesting fatigability should increase our suspicion for myasthenia gravis. And in 85% of patients with myasthenia, the initial symptoms were either ptosis or diplopia. The gold standard for diagnosis is serologic confirmation of autoantibodies to the acetylcholine receptors, as well as electrophysiologic studies. So there are bedside tests such as edrophonium and prostigmine that result in temporary elevation of the ptotic eyelid. Also, cooling the affected eyelid with an ice pack for 2 minutes may also result in temporary reversal of the ptosis. The sensitivity of edrophonium testing and ice pack testing is roughly 80% for each test. treatment with cholinesterase inhibitor medication often improves the ptosis, and surgery may be considered when medical therapy fails. Other non-isolated neurogenic conditions include chronic external ophthalmoplegia and ocular motor or third nerve palsy. Chronic progressive external ophthalmoplegia is characterized by symmetric bilateral ptosis and ophthalmoparesis, and the patients are usually in their 30s. A family history showing a maternal inheritance pattern, imaging studies to rule out other possible causes, and a muscle biopsy can aid in diagnosing this. It's a mitochondrial disease. Because CPEO may be associated with Kearns-Sayre syndrome, these patients often warrant additional workup for cardiac conduction defects and pigmentary retinopathy. Another cause of myogenic ptosis can be medication-induced, typically steroid or tenofovir. These have been described in the literature and stresses the importance of reviewing a patient's medication. Ocular motor nerve palsy is characterized by ptosis accompanied by ophthalmoplegia, diplopia, and poorly reactive dilated pupil, and can be a result of ischemic injury or aneurysm. CN3 palsy may necessitate imaging to rule out a compressive etiology. So let's just take a look at a couple of cases here. The upper image shows CN3 palsy. So just recall that the ocular motor nerve innervates the medial rectus, inferior rectus, superior rectus, and inferior oblique. It also innervates the levator palpebrae and carries sympathetic innervation from the Edinger-Westphal nucleus. So dysfunction can result from ischemia, infection, compression, trauma, and demyelinating disease such as multiple sclerosis. Some patients may present with any combination of ptosis, ophthalmoplegia, diplopia, and a poorly reactive dilated pupil. The ptosis may actually be profound. So when seeing a patient with CN3 palsies, you have to differentiate between complete and incomplete. In other words, pupil sparing and pupil involved. Pupil sparing CN3 palsy is commonly due to ischemic injury in patients with vascular risk factors such as hypertension or diabetes. In older patients, typically older than age 55, giant cell arteritis needs to be considered. Pupil involving third nerve palsy often indicates a compressive etiology because the parasympathetic fibers supplying the pupil travel on the outer, more easily compressed portion of the nerve. And these should be attributed to compression from a posterior communicating artery aneurysm until proven otherwise. So therefore, they warrant urgent investigation. You want to send these patients out right away for computed tomography angiography or magnetic resonance angiography. The lower image shows Horner's syndrome with a classic triad including unilateral ptosis, ipsilateral meiosis, and anhidrosis. And since Mueller's muscle only contributes to 1 to 2 millimeters of lid retraction, the associated ptosis is mild. The syndrome results from damage anywhere along the sympathetic pathway, which can be divided by first-order neurons. That would be hypothalamus to spinal cord. Second-order neurons, which is the spinal cord to the superior cervical ganglion. And the third-order neuron, which is the superior cervical ganglion to the orbit. So it's important to determine which order neuron is involved because Horner's syndrome secondary to involvement of the first or second-order neurons may be caused by underlying malignancy. The diagnosis of Horner's syndrome is confirmed if aproclonidine drop testing results in reversal of anisocoria. And then you use hydroxyamphetamine drop testing to localize the level of dysfunction. The drop will result in pupillary dilation if the dysfunction is at the level of the first or second order neurons, while no dilation will occur if the third order neuron is affected. So now Dr. Hauser will conclude this section on differential diagnosis by talking about pseudoptosis, and then she'll take us through the clinical evaluation of ptosis patients and talk about current therapies. Dr. Hauser.
Now, what is our differential diagnosis for pseudoptosis? Pseudoptosis, again, you're having that upper lid droop and the absence of pathology of the upper eyelids. So what are our options here? Our causes can be dermatochalasis, browtosis, superior sulcus deformity, microphthalmos, and hemifacial spasm. What we're going to do next is take each of those piece by piece and kind of unravel them a little bit and figure out which one of these may be impacting our patients. First, let's look at dermatochalasis. Dermatochalasis is redundant or sagging eyelid skin. Depending on what your practice is or where your practice is, odds are you're seeing this almost every day. The patient population that I primarily work with is patients, generally speaking, 50 and up. I see dermatochalasis all day, every day. So it's an important thing to identify in our examination. Manual lifting allows for assessment of that positioning of the under eyelid skin. And the reason that's important is, and we'll find out later as we look at browtosis, it can really be a differentiating factor between true dermatochalasis and more of a browtosis. Now, the prevalence of this in individuals over the age of 45 is about 16%. And it affects males more than females. Now, why are we seeing these changes? We're seeing this because we're living longer, and the longer we live, the more chronic problems that we have and more involutional eye problems that are identified. Now, with dermatochalasis, there can be a couple causes to that. It can be the traction due to the contraction of the orbicularis muscle over time, but there's also a second part, and it's the second part that really is not a friend to any of us, and that's gravity. So gravity can also play a role in it. So we're looking at traction and gravity to play a role in dermatochalasis. And eventually we're going to see a change or a loss of that quality and quantity of elastic tissue in the skin that causes those lids to kind of droop. All these factors ultimately are going to result in a lowering, particularly of the lateral 1/3 of the eyebrow, and that excess skin kind of weighting it down on that lateral corner of the upper eyelid. So the thing about dermatochalasis, not unlike what I said about ptosis in the beginning, is dermatochalasis has a cosmetic concern to the patients. The patients have those droopy eyelids and that dull appearance. However, they also can be subject to ocular irritation, and sometimes this goes unnoticed clinically. So why do they have ocular irritation? It can be secondary to chronic blepharitis. They can also have dry eye issues, and sometimes misdirected lashes can also cause problems for the patient. Additionally, dermatochalasis can cause a reduction in both superior and temporal field of vision, and quality of vision changes as well. So there can be definite visual impacts, both from how the patient sees and how the patient feels. Now, it's fairly predictable that you're going to see, as the margin reflex distance, measured in millimeters, decreases, you're going to see an increase in the percentage of superior visual field loss. But this study proves that point for us. So as you can see here, as the lid goes lower and lower, you see an increase in the percentage visual field loss. Now, what this study doesn't say, but other studies have found, is that you can also have a decrease in contrast sensitivity with some of these patients who have dermatochalasis. And there have actually been reports of significant improvement in contrast sensitivity of patients undergoing blepharoplasty surgery for dermatochalasis. So it actually can improve the quality of that patient's vision. Now, why does that happen? The proposed explanation is that redundant or heavy skin that overlays the eye actually blocks some of the light entering the eye and can cause some level of diffraction. So having a surgical opportunity to go in and resolve that, it's not just an aesthetics component, it's not even just a visual field potential improvement, but the patient may actually have better quality of vision as well. Now, I mentioned browtosis a little bit. We're going to talk about some of the etiologies of that and then how you can evaluate for it clinically to see if your patient is suffering from a browtosis or perhaps dermatochalasis. So as you see here, there's several different etiologies. Number one, involutional changes. Number two, secondary to weakness of paralysis of frontalis. Now, what does that mean for us? You know, this could be patients who have Bell's palsy, maybe an acoustic neuroma, surgical trauma, it could be a birth trauma, or it can even be congenital. Now, I've had a couple patients that have fallen in this particular category. I've had a patient with an acoustic neuroma and one with surgical trauma who's ultimately had a brow ptosis due to those two factors. The other possibilities there under the secondary weakness of paralysis is myotonic dystrophy. You can also have myasthenia gravis, a lot of different options. You also may have patients who have brow ptosis associated with neoplasm, as you can see here, basal cell carcinoma, squamous cell, and so forth. Now, how do we do that differential diagnosis testing? This is, really easy test to do in clinic, requires no special equipment, but it's really valuable. And perhaps some of you are already utilizing this, but as you can see here, we have a patient on the left. This is the same individual, but patient's image on the left is his natural lid posture. And you can see the brows look a little lower. Normal brow is going to sit above the superior orbital rim. So we do see that little bit of lowering of the brow. Again, male brows tend to be lower than female brows typically. But what we see in the second image, the image to the right, you have to kind of take a peek right up at the edge of the top of that image where you can see some fingertips that are in there. What we have here is the patient's brow is manually being lifted. You're seeing it elevated, so maybe that frontalis isn't fully engaged. And when we manually lift it and stabilize, you can see that there's a resolution of what appears to be an acquired ptosis. So we don't even have a frank dermatochalasis in this patient. If you look at it at just face value in that image on the right, one may interpret that as a dermatochalasis. However, with elevation of that brow, you can definitely see that it's not exactly so much about those heavy sagging lids as it is the brows not really fully engaged and lifting the brows as they should. Now with superior sulcus deformity, now this is not something that I personally see a lot of in clinical practice, primarily because this is going to be a cosmetic problem in an ophthalmia patient. So as you can see here, our patient, the left eye posture has more of an enophthalmosis pointing downwards. And part of that can be because a lot of these patients are subject to orbital floor fracture. They've had fracture, this has been corrected. This is their posture or from a prosthetic. And as you can see, there's a different exposure of the lid. So she's got a heavy kind of hooded lid over on the right eye. The left eye, you can see, has more of a ptotic type posture. So not something, again, that I've seen a lot of clinically, but it's definitely something that you may encounter. And it can also have that displacement because there's just changes in the volume of bone and orbital fat. Micro-ophthalmos, again, as I already identified, many of my patients that I see are in that older patient population, 50 and up. And I don't see a lot of pediatric patients like you see here, but just taking a look at this patient's reflex, you can see that the MRD1, or that reference distance or reflex distance in the left eye, is going to be smaller than it is in the right. So measuring from the reflex to the lid margin, we're seeing what appears to be a ptosis, but may not necessarily be identified as that. As we look at the etiology of micro-ophthalmos, frankly, the precise etiology of it really is unknown. However, there are some factors that may play a role, and many of those tend to be environmental or hereditary factors. So what would those be? It could be the maternal age, if the mom is over 40 at the time of birth, multiple births, low birth weight, and gestational age. And it could be gestational acquired infections, which I'll go through here in just a moment, some of those specifics, or exposures and deficiencies. So if you have a patient with micro-ophthalmos, you definitely want to get a good birth history and pregnancy history from the mom to see kind of what might have been risk factors for this particular child. And, what some of the gestational and acquired infections are. There's several of them. Most commonly, you're going to see risk factors like rubella, toxoplasmosis, and varicella. You may also see cytomegalovirus as a risk factor, parvo B19, even influenza virus, which is definitely, of all those that I've listed so far, probably the most common that we would expect someone to be exposed to, and Coxsackie A9. In terms of the deficiencies or exposures the mother may have encountered during pregnancy, vitamin A deficiency, fever, hyperthermia, exposure to x-rays, solvent misuse, and exposure to other drugs like thalidomide and warfarin, as well as alcohol. So again, getting a good case history in these patients is really important to have better understanding perhaps the origins of their microphthalmia. Hemifacial spasm. Now, hemifacial spasm, and we're going to kind of go through this as it relates to our image there on the right. But first of all, a little bit about the patients that are most at risk. So more frequently in middle-aged women or elderly women, more commonly amongst an Asian patient population. And really what happens first is the first symptoms tends to be an intermittent lid twitch that can ultimately to a forced closure. So this is above and beyond our typical myokymia that patients experience. So patient comes in with a lid twitch. We hear this all the time, and they say, this started, frankly, it can be really alarming to a patient when they experience myokymia, and we're usually recommending things like lower your stress level, rest more, decrease your caffeine consumption. However, for hemifacial spasm, it's really taking it to a whole new level. So again, you get that forced lid closure, and you can even see that spreading of the spasm into the lower face. And as you can see here in our image, the patient's mouth is drawn to one side. This can be related to nerve injury or tumor. However, many of them are without known apparent cause. So you may not know the etiology of this, and which can be really tough for the patient, because then sometimes it's harder to know when this could resolve. Now, as we look at assessing acquired blepharoptosis, so from a clinical perspective, how do we not only identify our acquired blepharoptosis, but how do we make quantitative and qualitative assessments of this? Now, one of my favorite tests for this is the marginal reflex distance, or MRD1. And we've talked a little bit about that already, but just to kind of circle back and hit on that one more time, as you can see here in the illustration, MRD1 measures from the corneal reflex to the upper lid margin. Now, MRD2 measures from the corneal reflex down to the lower lid margin. But in assessing acquired blepharoptosis, we're going to be focusing on MRD1. Now, that marginal reflex distance, again, is really important because it's giving greater precision than measuring strict total fissure height. I know a lot of clinicians like to measure just fissure height, but you're really getting again, more clear assessment by measuring that MRD1. Additionally, in my own clinical practice, I'll use visual field testing, and we're going to go through those various types here in just a minute. I have not leaned as much on levator function and the eyelid crease height, which is used in superior sulcus deformity evaluation. With the levator function, what you're doing is assessing by firmly pressing on the brow and measuring the distance moved by the upper lid margin when the patient shifts from downward gaze to upward gaze. So just food for thought about how you might want to incorporate this differently into your practice as you're evaluating a patient with acquired blepharoptosis. As I mentioned, some different visual field types. We're pretty familiar with all of these: Goldman visual field, Humphrey visual field, and LPFT. However, many of us in clinic are using the Humphrey visual field type of analyzer. It's sort of a mainstay, if you will, of clinical care. One of the things that I would say in terms of a ptosis patient, I might potentially rely on a Goldman visual field in a few cases. If a patient has some mobility issues, if they have trouble concentrating, some of my elderly patients, and these folks are ones that are going to be more subject to that acquired blepharoptosis, they may need that little bit of extra time to get the precise measurements that we want. So, I might kind of go towards a Goldman visual field for that subset. So all of these work for measuring what we need to do in terms of superior field, but they do it a little bit differently. Again, Goldman being our kinetic perimetry versus our static perimetry with our HVF and LPFT. Now, what about severity? As you look at these illustrations here, the first one you might look at and say, no big deal. right? 1 to 2 millimeter droop, assuming there's no underlying systemic issue, and perhaps this is a function or cosmetic concern. That's not too big of a deal, right? It looks like a pretty normally positioned eye. Now, certainly, I think patients may be more aware of that 1 to 2 millimeter droop. It may pop out to them a little bit more than it does to us clinically, even though there's limited visual impairment. Patients starting to get that little bit of awareness raised when they look in the mirror. As we transition now to a 2 to 4 millimeter droop, now we're in that mild to moderate category. Patients definitely going to have some awareness of it. We're going to be noticing it clinically because now we're getting some coverage from the pupil. So not all the light is going in the way it should be. And now that's when we're going to have to start that discussion. What are we going to do? Is this something that we need to do more about? Is this patient going to become a referral to oculoplastics? It's almost a point of discussion and negotiation and really kind of feeling where that patient is living in terms of their motivations. Now, as we go into that 4 millimeter greater droop, we're seeing significant visual impairment. We can see half the pupil is now covered by the lid. Not only is that going to be a functional concern, it's also going to be a pretty significant cosmetic concern for the patient. At that point, I think all parties on board are going to be on board to make that referral to oculoplastics and get further evaluation and consideration for a blepharoplasty treatment or some type of repair. So we do see our discussions kind of change with patients as we see the worsening or severity of blepharoptosis. So what are our current options for treatment? Now, I did talk a little bit about surgery as we're looking at those greater than 4 millimeter people with more of a severe acquired blepharoptosis. So surgery is an option. The pro of that always is going to be improved function and hopefully improve quality of life. Now, the con is that not all patients are good candidates and there are complications. Now, the complications that are listed here, bleeding, scarring, and infection, those are things that are almost ubiquitous across surgery. So these patients, the risks, benefits, and alternatives need to be discussed with them before that referral is made. Now, if we look at different options, off-label medication or use of aproclonidine is another approach. The good news there is we're going to see an increase in that upper lid elevation, so we're going to see a change in posture. The con is some unwanted side effects may go along with that, like pupil dilation. So consider that you're almost trading one asymmetry for another if you're using a medication like that. So what you might notice is, again, elevation to a normal posture for the lid, but now having that dilated pupil in that one eye is also not going to look perfectly, quote, normal. The patient may also be somewhat increased risk for contact dermatitis with the use of aproclonidine. Now, as we go into non-surgical options, mechanical intervention. These are probably my least favorite. Now, I don't mind mechanical intervention if I'm doing a visual field evaluation of someone who has dermatochalasis or a blepharoptosis and whatnot, because we need that taped versus untaped visual field assessment. However, it's not a great long-term answer. Is this definitely a temporary solution? Patients, if you're thinking about it from a functional perspective, we can elevate that lid, but from a cosmetic or quality of life, but you're certainly doing your patient no favors by recommending, medical tape to elevate their eyelid. It is a conservative approach for sure, and it can be done pretty quickly, but at the same time, it's very temporary and there are some associations with discomfort. So what is the current standard of care for acquired blepharoptosis? It's going to be surgery. So as we look at our surgical intervention, this is going to really address the pathology or insufficiency of several things, the posterior lamella, and you can do that via the anterior or posterior approach. Now, it depends. We have to have alignment, again, between what the patient's objectives are from a functional and cosmetic perspective and what the surgeon thinks that they can do. And that can be difficult. The lids surgery is very tricky, and I don't even mean from just a surgical perspective, but just the balance and making sure we get that alignment. So when we talked about the patients who have that really mild 1 to 2 millimeter differential between their two lids, that's a incredibly tricky surgery. It's hard to go in and make those little refinements. As we get into your more moderate to severe patients, there's definitely that option to make an improvement. However, ideally, a lot of the patients that we encounter would probably prefer something a little less invasive versus having a surgical experience. But currently, our standard of care is to approach that from a surgical perspective. So I know I would like to thank you for your time today, and I'd like to thank Dr. Resnick for contributing as well. We appreciate your time. Hope that you've taken away some pearls for how you can evaluate acquired blepharoptosis in your practice. And thank you so much for being a part of CEwire.
Hey everyone, it's Adam Farkas. Thanks for coming to CEwire2020 today. Now, I want to quickly review how to receive live COPE credits at the show today. We've spent a lot of time streamlining our process here at CEwire so that we automatically submit credits to Arbo. But in order for us to do that, a couple of conditions need to be met, so please watch this closely. First of all, in order to receive credit, you have to watch the entire lecture. Do not leave a lecture early if you wish to receive credit. Arbo's rules dictate that you must watch the entire lecture. The second thing is that we need to make sure that we have a valid OE tracker number for you on file. Without this, we cannot send your credits to Arbo. Let's quickly go over how to make sure your OE tracker number is in the system. From the conference lobby, you want to click on the bottom where it says Help Center. You can also use the link on the top that says Help Center. Once you're in the Help Center, click on the link that says Privacy Center. It's the third one down. Once you've clicked on that, then click on the link that says Edit Profile. There you'll see your entire profile. The very last field at the bottom says OE Tracker. Put in your OE Tracker number here. When you've got it right, click Save. That's all there is to it. Once we have your correct OE tracker number, we can reuse it over and over again when we send your credits into Arbo, so you only need to enter it once. If you have any questions about this process, feel free to just use the chat window during the lectures to ask us a question. We'll be here monitoring the sessions today, and we can guide you through the entire process. It's super simple. So again, thanks for coming out to CEwire today, and enjoy the show. Okay, and we're back. So I think everybody should have seen by now how to actually get their courses in, and let me pull this out of the way here. So there we go. And so I just showed the movie one more time about how to get live credits. So I think it's pretty self-evident at this point that we've simplified the system and people can go and get credits quite easily now. So excellent. So Steve, are you there?
No, but I'm here.
Oh, cool. So yes, so I just showed people.
One of us.
I showed people the movie on how to get credits again, and it's a pretty simple system as long as they can, figure it out. So I think I made it pretty self-evident, but who knows?
Great. Sure. You ought to copyright it.
So I'll show it one more time to people. I'll put up my screen here just so people can see. It is a little bit challenging. If you don't know how to do it, or if you don't have somebody walking you through, but otherwise, if you do, you just click on.
Just the first time.
Yeah, you just click on Help Center, and then go to the Privacy Center, Edit Profile, and put in your OE tracker number. And again, there's a direct link as well, right from the lectures. If you're in the lecture, there's a button that says Update Profile /OE Tracker, and Steve is in there as well to help people get that up to date. So I think we should be all set there. And Kat removed all the references to other forms of filling out tests and everything else. She removed all that stuff, so that's not there anymore. So literally all you need to do is just put in your tracker number and you're set. So I know for some people it's a little bit of a shock doing it because we haven't had to do it that way all along, but I think it's not.
So far, very few complaints.
Yeah, I've only gotten a couple of emails with people really confused, and most people who are in the lectures figure it out easily because Steve is there to talk them through it. So yeah, I think we're in okay shape with it. So anyway, so
Right.
we just finished up the movie on ptosis. That lecture is actually one of the lectures at CEwire, and if you actually watch that whole thing on CEwire, you will get a live COPE credit for watching it. But not here. You got to do it inside of CEwire because the software tracks, what you watched and what you haven't. So hopefully,
And Sue Resnick will be standing by to answer questions.
correct. That's why you can only get live credits if the instructor is there to answer questions, right? That's why it's considered live. So you got to be there with the instructor in order to get credit. So yeah, and so well, it looks like all of our instructors have, done their jobs so far. We haven't had any tech disasters yet, as far as I can tell, with people not being able to get online, um, which is good. Let me actually pull up the schedule so people can see it. Okay. So, what's interesting about the schedule is that we've tried to do the same thing over and over again so that people, if they took one track one time, can take another track the next time, and then a third track the next time, and so forth, so people can legitimately earn all of the credits that we're offering. So
Sure.
hopefully people have started to take advantage of the fact that we're doing the show over and over again.
Yeah, that'll work. I got something. I got a straight email from Ron Kleinman. I'm going to send it
That's okay.
back with the copy to you.
I took care of it already. Behind the
Oh,
curve.
okay, you're on the ball.
Yes.
Okay, because
Yes, I took care of everything, so we're all set.
that'll be done. Okay, there's one other one.
I took care of
Okay.
everything. You don't worry. It's taken
Okay.
care of.
And another Dr. Hoppy wrote to me.
Unless somebody writes to you
Hoppy wrote, are
personally,
we still able to see the event if recorded?
yeah. Unless somebody writes to you personally, you don't have to worry about it because we're seeing it. When you write into support, or webmaster or whatever, I see everything. So unless somebody writes to you personally, then don't worry about it.
Is this one personally to me? I don't know. Okay, I think it should be all right here. Are we still able to see the event if recorded from earlier this year? The answer is yes, right?
Well, the event's still going on, so yes, if someone's registered from the beginning, their login should still work perfectly, and they should be able to get in and watch.
Yep. Okay. Just send them. Just log in and watch. Okay, that should answer that question. And that's fine. Oh, there are many people taking, I guess, Steve can answer. Are there a lot of people attending the courses today?
Yeah. There are several hundred, so yes. So the number of questions that we're getting, fortunately, is very low relative to the number of people who are here because Steve is there and the support people are there in the chat rooms in the classes. So as questions come up, they're answering them. Also, in between each in between each class, my little movie is playing, showing people how to enter their OE tracker number in the right place. So hopefully, all that combined will get people.
Okay, so
Yeah. Fortunately, we have people.
And actually, for the 12 o'clock.
Yep. Yeah, the 12 o'clock lectures are already in the can. So yeah.
Yeah, so they're okay. So there's no problem. Okay, that should work.
Yep.
Anyway, let's see. What else can we talk about? The sponsors are happy. They're all in their booths. There are people in the booths to answer questions.
Some booths have people in them today. Some people just have an email form. So either way, though, if you're interested and want discounts, you can go in there and look. So you just go into the exhibit hall. So it really depends on the sponsor. Some just didn't bring folks today. This is sort of an in-between conference, right? Because it's neither fish nor fowl. We're going to have three more after this. This is a busy week for a lot of people, right? I mean, in theory, it's back to school week, so
Yep,
I think a lot of
if there
people,
is such a
if
thing.
there is such a thing, so a lot of people have a lot going on. So I think coming in and doing this is a little more challenging this week. But the exhibit hall is open. You can see I just clicked on it, and you can see all the different courses that are offered, and you can see all the different booths that we have here. It's an overwhelming number this year. Actually, we have a lot of exhibitors. But if you enter any one of their booths, you can see what they're all about and see what the discounts are and so forth.
And they were really ready to do business. I mean, with Vision Expo East and West closed and the Academy out,
Yep.
they got plenty of inventory and plenty of time.
Yep, that
So
is true.
it's really a buyer's market.
Yep. Yeah,
Absolutely.
they're willing to deal. So definitely go in and check out all the sponsors, and we'll be sending emails out as well to everyone afterwards, talking about the different deals that the sponsors still have going on. So you can check that out. One of the other things I want to show people again, if they're wondering why the live stream's a little weird today and possibly quality degraded, and obviously you can't see any video, where our studio has had some near fatal problems.
Underwater.
Yeah, it's had you can see on the screen, we've had a bit of damage here, and the
I think
place.
you'll be ready in about a week or so.
Yeah, the place should be back together. You can see it from the pictures that's slowly evolving. It's probably going to be another 2 weeks, I would say, before the place is fully back together. I have a conference that I have to do for one of our sponsors actually next week. Another virtual show, which means the studio has to be in some sort of order. So, but it's just going to take a little time.
You're gonna do it live TV, so you have to have lights and cameras and everything else.
Yeah, we have to have everything set up
Right.
again. But it was just such a mess here for this one. But it should be good enough by later in the week. So yeah, this has not been easy. You really take for granted when you have your whole studio set up and everything has been. I mean, basically, when you look at what we've had set up, the infrastructure hasn't really changed much in the past couple of years in terms of the way the studio was set up, and to all of a sudden have this influx of water and have to immediately disassemble everything and put it away and cover it, and then walls started coming down. It's very alarming. And it makes it very difficult to work, right? Because I'm sort of crammed into one room now and don't have most of my equipment that I need.
By the way, I'm back now, and I'm showing my wife your your basement.
It's beautiful.
Yeah. Oh, thank you.
Boy.
Yeah, we
Okay, a little report. The issues have been resolved. It was a little confusing, and now we've taken off the attendance button to anybody who's listening, and all you have to do is put your OE tracker in once when you update your profile, and you're good to go for the whole 2 days of the lectures.
Yep, and I ran the video again of me explaining how to do it, and we'll keep running it over and over again. I think most people get it. I know why it's confusing to people, and I apologize for that. Because we've been doing it one way for so long, and then all of a sudden you make a change, and people are like, "What the heck? I'm not used to this." Right? I've taken 20 credits or whatever in the past doing it this way, and now all of a sudden you're changing it. But we're doing it for a good reason, right? We want to make this super automated. So once your OE tracker number is in there, you never have to do anything again. You just have to sit there and watch.
And people don't realize the technology is so good nowadays that we know they're in the class based on just the software tracking their attendance.
Right.
So they don't have to attest to something that we already know about. And in fact, if they don't take the whole course, they won't get credit for it. So they can attest all they want in the previous versions, and this is a far more, let's say, consistent way, and I think Arbo is more pleased with it.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. So I think that'll.
Are you there?
Yep, still here.
Yep.
Yeah, still there, Steve. Yeah, it's a little choppy here, but that's
So just for the technical part, for a technophobe, I represent all the ignorant people about technology.
Yeah, we had a few of you this morning.
How do they? Well, besides falling asleep and worrying about will they get credits, how does the computer know if they've left the room
Well, so
or they
the
just
way the
are
way it
not
works,
there.
no, the way it works is that if you leave your browser window open, that's what it's actually checking and making sure that your computer doesn't fall asleep. So, that's another thing. So if you're using your computer to watch this, occasionally hit your keyboard, because if your computer falls asleep and you get a lock screen up, right? So you know how when you walk away from your computer for a long time, the lock screen
Yeah,
comes up? Yeah, that's bad.
right.
Because what'll happen is it'll detect, oh, this person's not here, um, and you won't get credit. So you got to be sitting in front of it, and that's how it's checking. It's just making sure your browser window is
Yeah.
open and the monitor is on. Um, so
Okay, so therefore you have to stay awake,
well, yes.
right?
I mean, look,
I worry about that.
look.
You could have a chimpanzee next to you working the
Yeah,
button.
I mean,
Steve, you and I, Steve, have given enough lectures at CE where you saw people not only having newspapers out while you're talking, but actually the heads dropping down onto the desk.
And they still get credit for it when it's live. Yes, they
Yeah,
do.
but
They
now
sign the form.
But now they can't do that because the computer will say they're asleep. So,
No, it won't. As long as you don't have you in the power settings of your computer. I have mine going off after, let's say, 2 hours, 3 hours, something like that. And so it should stay on for the entire 1 hour lecture. And all you have to do is, as Adam says, is like move your mouse to show you're alive. And they're going to do that after the lecture anyway. And indeed, Adam, sometimes people have problems with sound, and I tell them to go out and come back into the room. The software still detects that they'll listen to the most lectures. So they can leave and come back for a brief time. The software will know that they haven't left for the majority of the lecture.
Yeah, when people have a problem like that, what I'll tell them to do sometimes is just refresh the page. Just do a refresh, and then it'll pick up where it left off, and you'll be fine. I've seen that happen before with a lot of different things. So yeah, just do a refresh.
Okay, so one thing we're going to, that's not in now, we're going to try to get back in, I'm going to email support, is when you do the chats in the room, there used to be a timestamp. And it was good to know what time people are talking to each other, what lecture they were, but for some reason it's not in it now. So I'm going to have support put the back in. That should be pretty easy to do.
Sure. Yep. All right. Well, I'm glad everything's going smoothly. I'm trying to think. Let me pull up on the screen what courses are going on right now, because I have no idea. I am clueless as usual. So, because we're coming up on 1 o'clock, right? Coming up, we got the next of the Clark Chang marathon, and Ben Casella is giving the second hour of narcotics, and then Michael Trattini is going to talk about ocular and orbit trauma. So, excellent. You know, and I wonder, Steve, there are several hundred people here this morning. I wonder how many people are back again and just taking a different track than they did from last time.
You know, I've been doing this is our fourth time, so I go into each room to make sure the speaker. I looked down again, so indeed returning. Some more famous ones you remember. And what's really curious is that ones that have registered between, let's say, May and August. Or June and August. I'm losing track of it now.
Right.
Okay, here's a question that came up in the category of squeezing blood out of a stone. Okay, he's on, but do you have this previously I purchased? I could not see everything. I can still go back and see some that I missed. And the answer was yes.
Of course.
Now, the extension of that would be, I missed courses in the previous years.
No.
Can I go back? And the answer is no, correct?
The answer is no. Remember,
No, they lose their approval, number one.
Yeah. Yeah, the courses all have expiration dates. It's just like any other course. So yeah, so you can't go back to previous years. These things expire, and in fact, over time, expiration dates have gotten shorter and shorter with Orbo. So no, you cannot go back from previous years.
And not to blow on the horn, but we try to keep this stuff timely, and optometry moves so quickly. If you listen to an OCT lecture from 2015, for example, Dr. Friedberg's, which was excellent then, it's way out of date now. So both the content would be stale and not up to date, and again, the tracker numbers go. And the third, we have very, let's say, all-star cast of speakers, and they want to maybe use that content somewhere else in some other platforms. So for all three reasons, after the year